morning, everybody. My name is Grace Rivera Oven. I represent District 1, and I'm the chair for the Special Populations Committee. Welcome, bienvenidos a todos. Today is September 29th, and this is our first meeting of the year, so thank you for joining us. So we are looking forward to a very informative and lively discussion this year as we enter our first year of our new strategic plan. This year, our committee will continue to dedicate itself to enhancing the experience of our special populations in all our schools. We recognize that most of the students spend a significant portion of their time in general education classes. Our mission is to understand who our special populations are and how they navigate their school experience. Before I go on, I would like to introduce my wonderful colleagues, and I will ask them to please introduce themselves. I'll start with my left.
Good morning. Thank you, Rita Montoya, Board of Education Member at Large. Thank you all for being here this morning.
Good morning, Laura Stewart, representing District 4, and happy to be here on this lovely Monday.
Thank you. As you can see, I have wonderful colleagues who join me in this committee, so I appreciate that. Today, we will also approve the 2025-26 work plan for the committee. We will also continue the presentation that we left off. I feel it's been like a year, so it's been quite a while, on identifying and serving our gifted and talented students, a very important conversation that we started last time. And then we will then receive a presentation from the Division of Special Support Services that I'm really looking forward to. So next, what am I doing next, Ms. Yolanda? Any questions or concerns? And I think we need to approve the past.
Yeah, you're going to go over the informational summary, which is in there. Make sure that's fine. Any questions on that? And then we're going to begin the agenda with the work plan and forward.
Just wanted to give my colleagues a second. Any questions? No questions. Yes, let's get going. So then we're going to begin our...
You're going to go through the work, just preview the work plan. We're just going to preview it, and then we're going to move on.
Okay. With that, you guys were able to look at the topics that we had?
Yes, okay. I'm good with the topics. Thank you.
All right.
I think we have to vote on it.
I don't think we have to vote on it, but I just want to make sure it's approved. But I just would like to get us a consensus. Okay. Can I have a consensus to see if you all approve?
Yes.
Ms. Stewart?
Yes.
Yay. With that, let's get going because we have a lot to cover today. Good morning. If you could please introduce yourself for the folks who are watching and for us. Remind us of who you are and your title, please.
Good morning, everyone. I am Christy Clark, the supervisor in Accelerated and Enriched Instruction within the Division of Teaching and Learning. I'm here with my colleague, Sarah Jackson, who is our twice exceptional instructional specialist, and we are excited to continue our presentation from May 5th, where we talked about our gifted and talented students. Sarah is going to present on the twice exceptional students, and I am turning this over to her now.
Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning. So like Christy said, we're going to pick up in the section we left off on, which was on twice exceptional. This controls, right? I can use this? Yes, awesome. Fantastic, love it. So just to recap this first couple of slides that we did where we were talking about who our twice exceptional students were. And twice exceptional really is our students who have been identified both as having cognitive potential, have very high cognitive potential, usually in the 90th percentile or higher for their age. And they're also identified as having one or more challenges or disabilities. It does not require that they have any type of paperwork, no IEPs or 504s, although that typically is how we track who they are, how many we have in our system, and how we're supporting them. But as a profile of learner and a profile of person, this is who they are without having to have any official designation. Part of our job and our challenge, of course, is to identify both that giftedness as well as those challenges, and then determine what type, if any, support that they need within their particular settings. One of the biggest things that makes this both fun and a challenge is that they are most noted by their masking, which is when either their giftedness hides their disability, the disability hides the giftedness, or they're both hiding each other so that they look average when really they are a contradiction of needs and they're struggling in a variety of different ways. The most common term we use for our kids is consistently inconsistent. You never know what they're going to do, but you know it's not going to be what you expected. And that for them, for those learners, it produces frustration and anxiety. It presents most often to other people as behavior problems, but really it's just part of the behavior of the profile because they are struggling with this consistent inconsistency. And I think another important thing to remember is that while we are the school system, as a twice exceptional person, that is their life. They're like this at home, they're like this at school, they're like this with their friends in the neighborhood. And so while we only deal with the frustration that presents to us in the school system, for those students, it is their life. And so a lot of the supports that we help deliver are helping them manage all of these aspects of their lives so that they can take their learning and live more full and fulfilling lives. And that is where that really complex support comes in, and we'll get into that in a couple more slides. But essentially, we know that these are students who require both acceleration when appropriate, enrichment constantly, and also specially designed instruction that usually focuses around soft skills, skills that are hard to nail down, but are desperately needed for our students. So that is what this ends up looking like in the classroom setting. You know, what do these specially designed instruction look like? It looks like being able to, in that typically general education classroom, providing the topic acceleration or content acceleration, providing enrichment, providing different ways to think, different ways to express themselves, but then also providing that specialized support. Sometimes it's with our special education staff. Sometimes it's the general educators who are supporting them depending on their need and how we present that. And it's also a lot about access, making sure they're accessing the appropriate level of instruction. Many, many, many of our twice exceptional students are in our compacted classes, accelerated classes, AP, IB, and a lot of our students are in dual enrollment. And so especially as they get older, teaching them how to navigate this so that they can be high school students successful in the college setting is a big part of what we do as they get older. And we also have specially designed social emotional instruction. It's a big project we've actually been working on. I'll talk about in our end slide, but spending a lot of time, like I said, on those soft skills around the executive functioning, self-advocacy, and social emotional needs. So this is a new slide that we reformatted for you guys because we really want to talk about what is this twice exceptional service, specifically through special education, because it is a service like no other. It is one of the few in the country that exists, and it really is meant to be a synthesis or a synergy of best practices in gifted education along with what we do with special education, what we provide as far as services go. So we're really talking here about students who, again, are accessing those high-level classes, but we're using special education support, and specifically I'm speaking about twice exceptional students with IEPs in this case, who have that inclusive access, having our advanced teachers understand what Universal Design for Learning is and making those advanced courses more accessible across the board for many students, but specifically for our students. Understanding that enrichment and complexity does not mean a heavier workload. It means a more complex workload. It means a heavier thinking load, but it shouldn't always mean enough essays to make you cry in a week, which is often how advanced classes get translated. But we really are working to explain that you don't have to cry in order to be an advanced class. But helping our students be able to express those deeper thoughts and opinions and ideas in a way that is manageable for them while also building their capacity, because some of the issue with our students is that they either don't understand their own capacity for learning and working, or because there's so many different areas of them struggling, it's hard for them to channel their energy in the right direction. And so that becomes part of our process also, is teaching them how to manage all of those different pieces of their profiles in order to meet those needs. one of the key pieces of our Twice Exceptional Special Education Services is that cohort. Cohorting is a gifted best practice. It is not a special education best practice. That's why we kind of pulled it out at the bottom here, because we do support the heterogeneous inclusion. We do support having access to our gen ed peers and to our advanced gen ed peers. But one thing we also know is that best practice for gifted ed is cohorting students so that they have that opportunity to be with other gifted students. And for twice exceptional kids, it's even harder because they don't always fit with the gifted kids and they don't always fit with the special education students. And they don't always necessarily fit with each other, but at least they don't fit with each other in a collective way that makes sense to them. And so that really becomes one of the hallmarks of our program and our services is being able to provide that location. You know, we have, give or take, and I'll go through those slides in a moment, around 3,000 twice exceptional students in the county. Around 800 of those students, and these are identified students, have IEPs, but we also have 200 plus schools. So our kids are spread everywhere. And for some kids, it's okay, but for some kids, they really need to have that access to those similar peers so that they have a place to belong and they have a place to get both the enriched instruction they need as well as the special education services they need. I'm going to stop there if you guys have any questions. And then my next few slides are all about demographics through last year.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jackson. I remember how wonderful you were at our last presentation and how grateful I was and still am for the depth of knowledge that you have. I remember how passionate you are about this subject, and I just really appreciate that because it really helps us to be better informed. Can you just tell me the number that you just said again? I think I just missed it. That it was like 800 or?
We have and that's my next slides. I'll have my end of year numbers for sure. But we have approximately 3,000 students who are twice exceptional. And I get that number from pulling directly the number of students who have either 504s and IEPs and are identified as gifted. We also know that number is underrepresented because there's a lot of students who, and we've talked about this in our previous session, we're still working on best practices for identification in order to make sure our students are identified appropriately, especially with that gifted flag, but then also helping navigate the process of whether or not they need more support than just UDL and best practices in the classroom. Do they need 504s or IEPs? That is a complex process that we help navigate. But 3,000 is a pretty good estimation right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, so I'm happy to hear that we're trying to, and I know amongst the many things we're trying to do, but trying to figure out how we can identify students, because I even get concerned about the gifted identifier, that we are not necessarily identifying children who might be gifted because perhaps their challenges are getting in the way of them being able to kind of demonstrate that in the way that it is measured within MCPS. So I just have to wonder if we might have other kids who also have 504s and IEPs who likely would be, or they're kind of close enough where they might need these similar kinds of supports.
We absolutely do. And one of my little many side projects right now is working my way through different grade levels. And what I actually end up doing is pulling lists of students from a grade level that are not identified as gifted, and I try and focus on the grade levels of the year after we do the central process. And there are times where I just spend a week and I read every single psych report I can find for every student in that grade level, just looking to see if they even have those baseline scores that we use for identifying gifted, and then kind of making a list to see how far off we are. And then what we're working on as a part of this process is how do we refine that pathway of identification for students so that, you know, a lot of times our teams know they're gifted, they have that conversation, but if the IEP team doesn't happen to know that there's a process for identifying those students through our office, those kids don't get identified. At least the school team, because they've discussed it, they know. But one thing we're working on is better strengthening that communication and better strengthening processes to make that process of identification just paperwork-wise easier so that we can have better and more accurate numbers.
Okay, yeah, and I really appreciate that because I imagine we have students who might be in accelerated courses or AP and IB, and maybe they're not labeled as gifted. And maybe even if you look at their, you know, there's test scores and various things that go into that, maybe they don't quite meet it, but it could be because they're not, or they have not gotten the support they need with their IEPs or 504s, or not having those even, that they're not able to really demonstrate their full potential in that way. But they still need support because they're still going to fall within these types of groups. Thank you.
Exactly.
Ms. Stewart.
I'd like to go on the other side of the identification. She actually had some of the same questions I had, but so we have a lot of kids that are gifted, and they're labeled as gifted officially, but they have a lot of social isolation and issues because the other side is not identified because they mask so well that they don't cause a problem in the classroom. You know, for the most part, they figure out a way to get through and you know, get those grades people expect them to get because, you know, they're in these classes and they're going through, yet they are not integrated all the time. And so what's the process of trying to get these kids identified if you do, like if a teacher sees this social isolation or these kids kind of slip through the cracks? So I'm curious, what's the process of getting children identified that might not present as a disruption?
And these are absolutely the most challenging kids in a lot of ways to identify because they're not behavior problems. It's the double-edged behavior problem sword. The kids who act out get noticed. The kids who internalize don't get noticed as easily. Mechanically, it's the same process as we have for any other student who we're seeking either a 504 or IEP for. But the real nuts and bolts of it have to do with that professional learning piece and that getting out into whether it's the parent community or within the school community. And that is where so much of our effort is in that professional learning side. We've always worked very closely with special education. Glad they're here today. You know, working hard to provide support and instruction around identification, what to look for, what's available, and for our resource teachers, for special ed teachers, I teach a class during this year. I actually have a second teacher now who teaches a class in recognizing and serving twice exceptional. And we get so much out of our teachers. Anytime we do any presentation for AEI, we work a bit of that twice exceptional or that just social emotional learning for gifted students into our presentations. And after every presentation, there's always a flood of, can you help us with this? And then some of the best practices that we teach on the AEI side have to do with that. They might not be identified, but we do specifically one on executive functioning for gifted kids because gifted does not come with a skill set. You know, a lot of people think, oh, they're gifted, they should be able to fill in the blank, but that doesn't mean they automatically know how to take notes, or organize themselves, or turn anything in on time. We have to teach those skills. And so teaching it through that gifted lens is part of what we do. We have one on perfectionism and what does it look like in a healthy way? What does it look like in a problematic way? And when is it time that maybe we need to seek outside support? And so sometimes just reframing things we already know for our teachers and things that they see, and to kind of giving them that permission, like, this is okay, this is when you might need help, and this is when you and the students need help and you need to seek further. And that is a big part of what we do because, you know, there's only a few of us and there's thousands of teachers and they have much more access to the kids than we do.
I think part of this too is to let kids know how to identify it even in themselves so they can self-advocate, and also even if they're not officially identified, have those like lunch bunches so you can kind of support each other. But I think it's so hidden that even kids might not even realize what they're going through. And so
Absolutely.
Anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
And anytime I talk to or do any consulting with school teams, I always make sure that whatever resources we give them, that we give them that broad permission. We're talking about this one student here, but this is going to be good for students with these profiles. And so I like that frequently I go into schools I've been at before, and they've already used those resources. They're continuing to use those resources for students, whether or not they're identified, which I think is a positive.
Great.
I have a couple questions, but I would like us to go to the next slide. And if I could reserve it then to ask the questions after the next slide, that'd be great. Go ahead, Sarah.
So, so these are our demographic data from last year, and I did update the numbers since May to get our numbers as of the end of June. So these are our students who are actually in our regional service sites, which are elementary schools at Barnsley Elementary, our middle schools at Clemente, North Bethesda, and Odessa Shannon, and our high schools are Northwood, Walter Johnson, and Watkins Mill. So we just pulled these numbers so that you guys could have a picture of what it is or who it is that we're serving. And I know when it comes to gifted, demographics are a big part of what we look at. We also do know that when you pull those demographics by school, there's a lot of variability within each school program. Some are more representative of the school they serve, and some are much more identified with our Caucasian students. We do know our Caucasian students are overly represented, and those numbers have fluctuated over the years. I didn't think you guys wanted like 10 slides on that, but I definitely dug in to see kind of what those waves and patterns are for how we identify students and how we identify students to get services. But this is where we were for last year. This is our, my eyes are getting old. So this is our large groups. So the top row is our students who are identified as gifted and talented and also have 504s. And then the bottom row is our students who are identified as gifted and talented and also have IEPs. So we have that broken out across our demographic groups, and then I put them in the pie chart because I like the colors more than the numbers. And you can see, you know, again, it's pretty consistent. We are way overrepresented with our Caucasian students. But I will say there's a lot more colors up there than there used to be. And so while the numbers aren't great, we have made a lot of progress. I know specifically when I first started teaching at Northwood in the program in 2014, our program was 99.3% Caucasian and was at 0.7% everybody else. And within 2 years, we actually were able to match the demographics of our school through just professional learning and just all the things we've talked about already. And so we have made movement in our numbers, but there's a lot to be desired. And then this is all of those numbers, including our students in our twice exceptional regional services in one big handy dandy pie chart. And like I said, the balance, it all is about the same, but has moved a lot since we've been tracking these numbers, which is about 10 years for some of our locations.
Okay, so now I'll ask my questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And excuse my voice, I've been fighting with this laryngitis for a couple of weeks. So a couple of things that I'm interested in is piggybacking on something that my colleague to my right said about, it's just about, I'm trying to understand when is the average age that our system identifies a twice exceptional child? When does that happen?
Can you repeat that one more time?
When is the average age that MCPS identifies a twice exceptional child? Like when is that around? I know it's not but when does that happen?
So officially it would happen at the end of second grade because that's when we officially identify gifted. So all of these numbers are third grade and above because we don't have a mechanism right now for either tracking twice exceptional. We don't have a specific twice exceptional label. And we also don't offer that GT flag until the end of second grade. So any students who are in our pre-K, PEP, all the way through second grade are not formally identified. That's not to say we don't serve them or support them. I would say one of the largest groups I've had in consulting and doing stuff with in the last couple of years has been that K2 group. I spent a lot more time in kindergarten than I ever thought I would. And it's a little bit harder in that because we don't label it, but we know that it's there. So part of that coaching is when we talk about those 504s or IEPs, how do we document it on those documents? But at the same time, our current mechanism doesn't easily let us say, okay, this is a kid we know is twice exceptional and we've been supporting on a 504 or an IEP for 3 years now, and it's the end of second grade, and we don't necessarily have an easy flag or an easy way to mark them as gifted. So that is definitely a barrier that we have. In my ideal world where twice exceptional is everything, I would love to have a twice exceptional flag that we could have that extra pathway to identify students. Like you said, like we have parameters for identifying gifted. Our twice exceptional students skirt those parameters sometimes, but we still know they're twice exceptional. And so part of our discussion is, do we identify them as gifted anyway? Like I said, in my magical world, I get a twice exceptional flag. That makes it hard. And that's one of those places where we rely a lot on the professional learning and the knowledge of the school teams and the documentation on 504s and IEPs to support them and provide the services, but it doesn't help me tracking demographics.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I'm going with this, because when I look at the demographics of our population currently in MCPS, and I'm looking at the geographics of where twice exceptional children are coming in a sense, right? My questions are the uniformity of how we're identifying twice exceptional children in MCPS as a system, right?
Right.
So you might have, for a better word, the experts in certain schools that, you have the right team,
Yep.
and by luck, hey, your kid's going to be identified. And if we do it until second grade, I guess my concern is,
What about the dozens of schools where we don't have the expert people to be able to be on the ground and make those decisions or
Correct.
determinations?
correct.
That is 100%. And I think I would echo special education as well. That's a problem across the board is our services, our support, and our identification is only as good as the team in front of us. And we work really hard for all of our
There's
areas.
no doubt, yeah.
So I was going to
There's
say,
no doubt you guys work very hard, and there's
but
no
that
doubt.
is the question, is how do we
Yes.
get more expertise out there? How do we
Yes.
do a better job of identifying whether it's the disability or the giftedness? How do we do a better job of getting that expertise into all of our schools and not
Correct.
just our lucky schools?
Correct, because we constantly say, we're looking at things with an equity lens. We're looking at things with an equity lens. It's very nice on paper to say we're looking at things with equity sense and with an equity lens, but I'm more interested in the practice of, are we doing what we're saying? And if we're not doing what we're saying, what is the barriers? Because I think my colleagues and I would like to know, what are the barriers that exist currently in our system to prevent you from doing that? Because I'd be interested to know, right? Because we know one of the largest groups of right now in special education, and Dr. Cage is here today, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's mainly with the EML population. We have a significant growth within the EML population. And then you also have, if it's up to second grade, you also could have children who are, who their first language is not English,
Right.
who can probably be twice exceptional. Just because you don't speak English doesn't mean you're not twice exceptional. And do we have the capability to be able to do those evaluations for children like that? Because if we don't, right, then you have, because I can tell you, I know for a fact I have a kid who's twice exceptional. And one of the reasons why I ran, I think, for the board is because I felt that the system absolutely ignored my child and what I was saying and begging for evaluations and begging, and he'll grow out of it, he's just shy, right? All these labels that you get, and you're like, no. And I'm a pretty, self-resilient mom, right? So I'm thinking about those other moms who are not. And this is I think why I love this committee, is because I think we need to start changing some of our paradigms. We need to start changing some of the ways we look at our special populations and twice exceptional children. I think we need to make sure that we are not the barriers. And if they are barriers, I think we have a duty to say what they are so we can have the tools to be able then to make sure we can accommodate all our children. There's nothing worse for a child to feel, just out of sync. Like I don't like not belonging,
Right.
right? And for a parent to be fighting that fight of, I need my child to feel like they belong. So anyway, if you have an answer or suggestions, that would be great. The question is,
I have a related, actually, question
okay, so maybe
to that.
we'll add her question and then,
Yeah, and I think that's right. I'm a current parent, so most of my questions and thoughts always come back to how can we help parents and families support their kids, whatever the issue is. And I think especially when we're looking at our younger children, a couple of things, like you mentioned, we don't even flag for giftedness until a certain grade. I think I know as a parent, when my children were going through those processes, I didn't really understand what it even was. Like, should I even care about this? And honestly, at the time, I was like, we have so many things going on. I don't have the capacity to learn about this or care about this. No one's really telling me about it. I'm not even sure if my kids took the tests because I was like, well, why am I going to have you sit for another test? You guys are tested out, right? Not realizing that, oh, actually, this could really impact them and if they needed, supports in those ways. So my question is, how do we, one, educate our parents and families? And how can we, as the board, help to support that? Because again, you guys are here doing so much work. So I'm always happy to support getting that information out to the community. And then, so how do we educate them about what this even is and why they should care? And then how do we educate our families and parents with how they can support their children, whether they technically have the gifted flag or not, but we know that there are some kids who are very, very intelligent and also have some challenges with executive functioning and things. How do we get that piece in there? Because as a current parent, I know that the schools, you only have them for 6.5 to 7 hours a day. And if I don't do some things when I'm at home and I have the privilege to do those things, some of our families don't. But how can we help them so that we can make sure that our kids are in a better position to learn? And then we can also help other parents, right? Sometimes parents don't have the privilege to do some of those things, but some of us can help.
Yes, I wanted to take this one in particular because our office is actually planning to have a series of parent information nights this fall, covering various topics, and one of the topics is GT identification. And so we felt that it's very important to get the information directly to our families. Previously, we had been working through the schools, but we really want the information to get to our families. So we are planning some series of just different things. GT identification, of course, we'll bring in twice exceptional, enrichment, just not just in elementary, but elementary through high school, so that parents know what the choices are and how we identify students for those options. So we're excited about that, and we hope that it helps. It will be virtual so that we can record it, and we'll be able to put that recording on our website as well. So we're really trying to just get more information out to the community.
Would you have translation?
That's what was going to be my question.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yep, we're going to have it all covered.
Right, because some of these terms, I'll be honest, I didn't know what ADHD was even when I first became a parent. Some of these terms are just completely unfamiliar to some of us, irrespective of the jobs that we do or the degrees that we have. Right, I'm not an educator, I'm not a psychologist. So I just really making sure that all of our parents understand even what these things mean, because then we can't support or even flag for things at home that we can then bring to the attention of, whether it's medical professionals, education professionals, et cetera. Thank you.
And I think a big part of what we do, like Christy said, making this push to go out into the community through our lens. I would love to see us take advantage also of community resources that are out there. There's amazing community groups in Montgomery County, as well as at the state and the national level. MCPS is actually hosting the Maryland Educators of Gifted Students Conference on October 17th. Gaithersburg High School is hosting us. And there is a whole track for Just Twice Exceptional. I'll be presenting there. But
Please send us that information if you can.
Absolutely. I know Dr. Taylor is actually delivering opening remarks, so anything we can do to support teachers getting to there, because sometimes I think also it doesn't matter how often I say it. If you hear it from other people's voices, it sounds more legitimate. So just getting our teachers and our administrators and everybody to hear the information and spread that out to our community in a wider sense. I think that those are all great opportunities that we have. We also have been working with our state group and our state people to release a Twice Exceptional resource guide that we're also presenting at MEGS. I have a lot of presentations this year, but we're presenting on this resource guide that we have developed with other counties in order to help our Twice Exceptional kids and put things out there for teachers in MCPS as well as other counties to say this is what we have available at the state level for professional learning, creating things that are more turnkey so that staff development teachers can use them as they plan their instruction for their own schools. Just trying to put as many resources out there because there's only a few of us. We can only go to so many schools, but if we can get those resources in people's hands, that's one way we're trying to break down those
Sarah,
barriers.
when you say there's a few of us, I'm wondering what is that number?
A few of us.
Yeah, you can say a few of us, but I'm just like
Me. But truly, I am
I just
our
wanted to
twice
clarify. When you say a
exceptional
few of us,
Us.
is more than one.
It
so
is.
I just wanted to clarify.
the royal we.
Because it sounds like you have a little army, but you don't.
I have my own army in my own mind.
No, I know.
But I mean, a lot of what I do also is just working with our professional staff. Besides going out to RITC meetings, a lot of our instructional specialists have taken courses with me, working with the instructional specialists in AEI. One of the things I'm really working on is trying not to have to be the one person at the table and having other people go out, having people from our office join me in presentations so that then they can go out and do presentations. They can help with some of the consulting. And then, like I said, building in this on our side, on the enrichment side, so that every piece of instruction that goes out from AEI, whether it's with our primary talent development coaches or the GT liaisons, which is elementary, or AISTs, which is middle school, we build twice exceptional instruction, identification, and or social emotional learning into all of these trainings so that it's getting out beyond just our little tiny community.
And sorry, just as a quick follow-up, when we talk about elementary, we have the Center for Enriched Studies programs.
Yes.
At a variety of schools throughout the county. The kids go to whichever one's in their kind of, I hesitate to use the word region, but their space,
Their
right?
bubble.
Right. That seems actually kind of like a natural reviewing group of kids, including the kids who may have qualified, but then they didn't win the lottery, right? Because it is a lottery process. Is that something that also maybe gets reviewed to see if kids in there can qualify for services or whatnot?
So qualifying for services is more about that special education process. When they show that need, when we go through, whether it's the response to intervention or however that process is defined, students who are in CES are eligible for their 504s or their IEPs, and they keep their services if they have them. That is a group that we definitely look at. And then also when we do our content instruction or our professional learning, all of those teachers get instruction on working with their twice exceptional kids and supporting them in CES. And part of our training in there also is whether or not they have an IEP, if they present like this, provide the support. And that's part of that whole universal design for learning that we do.
Okay, and I think that was where I was getting at, because I think when we talk about masking, right, a lot of our kids, and I'll just say I've heard from other families, I've heard myself, oh, well, but they're getting good grades. Oh, well, okay, that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And I think there's still this misnomer in society that if you're quote unquote academically smart or intelligent, then that must mean you don't have any challenges. And I think that actually helps to erase the support that some kids need. So I get really concerned about this idea that because a child is getting certain grades, that must mean they don't need support.
Right, especially the emotional support.
Right.
Can we, because I'm keeping time and I want to make sure we have, can we go to the next slide? Because
Yes.
a lot of what we touch and Ms. Montoya touched on is on the next slide as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, this was just, we know that the way students have been identified has declined and their access to our services has declined. And there are a lot of factors that we know go into that. But one thing we wanted to highlight is what we're doing to respond to that, which, when our services when the number of students accessing our services is declining, that doesn't mean our numbers are getting smaller. It just means the kids who are getting there is fewer. And so one thing we have been doing a lot is to push out professional learning so that the students who exist are still getting support wherever they are. We have been working closely with our school psychologists, and we have actually a proposal we're going to be sending to them this week about some professional learning we'd like to do. But just spending time, I've gotten to be in front of our first and second year school psychologists to talk about twice exceptional. I've been working in the past with our resource teachers and presenting at RITC meetings, and of course all the consulting we do. The CPD course, the Recognizing and Serving, that's a Maryland recognized course, and we teach it usually 2 to 3 times a year. And like I said, I have another teacher now who teaches it with me, and we have usually between 40 and 80 teachers a year who go through that, and that's 3 credits of professional learning where they really deep dive into twice exceptional students and what it looks like in their setting. And we have special ed teachers, gen ed teachers, EML teachers, media specialists. I've had pretty much everybody in some professional capacity in our course, and we've worked our way through a lot of work in there. We have a new resource curriculum that we've put out, or a framework rather, that we've worked on. It's a learning progression for students grades 6 through 12 that touches on 4 major areas of social emotional learning. And it's a process that we've been developing for about 2 years now. And we are presenting our newest iteration of it at the conference in October. We also are putting out the 3rd edition of the Twice Exceptional Handbook. It's still in draft right now, but we put out the last edition in 14-15, so this will be 10 years. And so this is a lot of updated research. There's been a lot of change of definitions right around 2019 to 2021. The Council for Exceptional Children changed the definition of how we look at twice exceptional, as well as some other major studies. So we are including that information. And also we're diving a lot less into programming and a lot more into what do these students look like, what do they need, and how do we support them where they are. And then we also hope to expand that framework that I have for 6 through 12 down to kindergarten. And then just also working more on our professional learning and targeting different groups of teachers with specific professional learning.
Thank you for that. One thing I would like to request from you is if you could make sure that each one of us gets a copy of the handbook
Absolutely.
that you're working on. That would be great.
If you love a rough draft, I got a great one for you.
But I guess my question is, when I got on the board, this was my question when I was asking about EML students, because as a former ESOL EML student, I feel that every adult in that building should be interacting with all students. And the lifting of EML students should be everybody's job, from the bus driver to the person who serves lunch, should be interactive and building vocabulary and helping out, lifting out our students. I kind of feel the same way about this too. And I know that it took a while, but I think now the workshop or the training they do is mandatory. When you're talking about this workshop, because we have a lot of new folks in the system, especially in the psychology department, a lot of our parent community coordinators, and so we have a lot of new staff. We have a lot of new principals, frankly. Mm-hmm. And I think they should be part of this training. No disrespect, but I just think, when you're kind of the leader, you need to kind of set the tone for everybody else where you are. So I'm wondering, are you working on training for those folks? And I don't want to put you on the spot to say that this should be mandatory, but I'm wondering if some of this stuff should just be, everybody goes through this training period.
I am happy to be a part of mandatory training. I will talk to anybody about twice exceptional, whether they want me to or not. Mm-hmm. I hear all my friends laughing. It's I am a twice exceptional person. My child is twice exceptional. My husband is twice exceptional. I'm quite sure it's a big family trait.
Some of us don't even know, but we are twice exceptional. I can tell you right now.
Honestly, the number of people who do my training and afterwards they're like, I didn't know this about me, because there are a lot of educators who are twice exceptional, whether or not they know it. Mm-hmm. I will talk to anybody about anything, and I know Christy will make me available or make any of our staff available to those trainings. So
yeah,
wherever you want me to talk, I'll talk.
If Ms. Christy can talk to it, I just, I just think we're such a big system. It's not like we're a very small system where we have 10 schools where everybody, knows each other, but we have 211 schools. We have almost 160,000 kids under our care. And I just feel certain things, should be parts of everybody's training. I don't know how you feel about that, Ms. Christy.
Yeah, yes, we agree. And we do have the opportunity to get in front of the community school coordinators every year. And I think it would be important for Sarah to join one of our other specialists so that can happen without any extra planning. But also we have an opportunity to speak at some of the principal PLCs. And I think that's a good space if we have enough time carved out to do really good kind of deep dive overview, if you will, of twice exceptional and then gifted in general, because it's just a topic that's not talked about a lot in the school district, and we are ready to get it elevated a little bit more.
Okay,
So we can definitely work on that.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for the feedback and for the sincerity. And I think it's important to have those conversations. If we feel like something's not being elevated enough, I think it's our job to say so. And because I think we're all here to do what's in the best interests of our kiddos. And that should always be the focus and our goal. Okay.
One more question.
One more question, and then we'll wrap it up.
This is a response to actually the title of the slide, to the decline in the 2E regional enrollment. When we originally looked at this presentation, I believe it was August. So now school started, and I don't know if you have any preliminary trends happening for this school year. Is it continuing to decline? Has it leveled off? Is it growing? Yes.
It's continuing to decline, and there's a whole lot of factors that are going into that. And so, as always, my first thing is let's make sure we have the information, because if we don't know who needs to be served, we can't get them where they need to be.
So this is alarming to me, to tell you the truth, that it continues to decline, because I know kids today and more are actually being diagnosed with ADHD and other issues that could impact this group of kids. I mean, I have to say that I'm probably the third member of the committee that also has 2E kids. Did not find out till much later because, again, they weren't sticking out, in the classroom. So how many, it's disturbing because I feel like we're losing some of these kids to give them the supports they need to be successful later in life. You know what really sucks? If you get diagnosed and you're in grad school. That's not great.
No.
It's never too late, but it's not great. So it has real effects on these kids' lives. And so if we can, as you know, you get them earlier, they have coping mechanisms and can recognize some of the patterns themselves and be able, again, to self-advocate and know where to go if they're feeling overwhelmed. This can make all the difference. And so I really want to dig into this declining enrollment and how we can counteract it, because this is not reflective of our student body. So that is something I'd like to follow up on and maybe at a later session, if that's okay with my colleagues.
Absolutely.
If you invite me back, I'll come talk.
Sarah, Chrissy, it has been truly a pleasure. On behalf of this committee and my colleagues in the board, I just want to say thank you so much for your work. It's not easy work, but I really recognize your diligence, but also your passion for this population. And so I just want to say thank you so much for everything. And if you need anything from us, or just an email, phone call away, I appreciate you both for taking the time. I know you're busy folks. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to ask for our next presentation, is Future Ready Special Education Status, Alignment, and Next Steps, just small stuff we're dealing with today. So I'm going to ask Dr. Cage to come and join us, and whoever else she wants to bring with her to the table. I'm looking at that we don't have a big enough table for our team.
Add some chairs if we need to.
But, and I just want to say thank you so much, truly, for the organizational chart that you have put together with folks' pictures and everything. That for folks like us, it is absolutely incredible, helpful. I know it seems very trivial, but it's not. So we appreciate that.
+1 on that.
And me. Appreciate it.
In fact, I think she started something new. We should ask of each department to do the same. So,
Do Do we need more chairs? We can pull. We good?
First, let me just say welcome to your first meeting. Yeah, and Dr. Jenkins also is, right? Anybody else whose first meeting this is?
First committee.
First committee meeting ever? Oh, my goodness. Hello. Thank you for being here. And Dr. Cage, I don't think this was anybody more exciting in this county than myself to know that you were on your way. I don't know if Dr. Taylor told you, but I think it was literally every day I would say, can she not come sooner? Can she not just take a plane, move her stuff later? So I just want to say how appreciative we are that you're leading this very probably one of the most departments that needs the most attention and the most TLC, I will say, in our community, with significant growth in population over the last few years. And I know that COVID, unfortunately, really stopped a lot of the progress that we were doing, unfortunately. And in some cases, we had to start from ground zero. And that's a big lift for a system as big as ours. So I just want to say to you and to your team and those folks who are here for the first time, welcome. We are delighted you're here. And with that, I'll let you start.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for having us here today. We have a lot to share, and we will definitely have to come back because we also have even more to share of the great things that has already happened but will continue to happen. I am seated at the table with a portion of our special education staff. These are the directors. And the associate and the ED and myself. And I just want to pause just for a second so that you can put names and faces together. And sometimes these people will be in the room when I'm not here presenting on various topics, and they are definitely the experts and undergird me in everything that I do. But I would be remiss as well not to acknowledge those who has been here at MCPS, and they have been so supportive to me, coming when I call, answering questions that I need, giving me information. So off to my right, I have special education staff and also well-being staff that came to represent today. And I would just like to acknowledge them briefly and have them stand, please. That's y'all.
Thank you, folks, for being here. Appreciate it.
Definitely. So I'll lead to my left with introductions.
Good morning, Lisa Garrett-Jones, Associate Superintendent, Special Education.
Good morning, Jada Langston, Director of Special Education Services.
I'm going to share her mic. Dr. Tyree Jenkins, the Executive Director of the Division of Specialized Support Services.
Good morning. My name is Vernetta Christian. I'm the Director of Special Education Compliance.
Good morning. My name is Julie Hall. I'm the Director for Special Education Systems and Management.
Good morning. I'm Erica Williams, and I'm the Director for Special Education, Pre-Kindergarten, and Related Services.
So without further ado, we're going to get in and start talking about our Future Ready Special Education. Today, we're going to share with you our status of where we are, our alignment pieces, and also our next steps. So in the agenda, which you talked about earlier, is the organizational chart. That came along because we do have so many new faces, some in county, some out of county, and we really always just want everyone to know who to contact and who's there for support. We're going to also talk about our mission and vision, something that we've been working to align all summer with the new strategic plan for MCPS and basically where we're going. Our strategic priorities undergirds the mission and vision, and just a general overview of special education and our strategies for improvement, hiring, and also staffing updates. So we're not going to sit through this, but I just wanted to have a Pictionary of everyone who is represented. Our staff is definitely eager and ready to support on all fronts. And I want to be sure that our community, our principals, our teachers, our paras, our board, central services know who to contact for those specific areas. So let's get right into our mission and vision and our strategic alignment. So our mission is breaking barriers, building futures. It definitely aligns with our strategic plan that Dr. Taylor and team released just recently. So in that mission and vision, we're talking about delivering high impact, inclusive supports for our students with disabilities so that they can engage fully, think critically, and develop skills to thrive. We also talk about what that vision looks like. It is success for all. We also know that our regular general education, twice exceptional students, all of our 160 students at some point may be identified for special education services or 504 services. So we're definitely focused on success for all. And then we are also coupled with our values, which are also aligned to our strategic plan, guided by learning, respect, relationships, excellence, and equity. Next slide. So our strategic priorities, we had a couple of huddles, we had a couple of work groups over the summer, we had a couple of parent groups, we have our CCAC, we have our MAG, all of those different things where I was able to sit for the first 60 days along with staff that guides that work. And we came together and decided as directors, after we have taken all of the work and the feedback and everything, we came up with these three big buckets. These three big buckets are also aligned to the Maryland Blueprint. They're also aligned to the work from Maryland's Department of Ed, which we call MSDE. It is also aligned to many of our corrective action plans and also our areas where we need the most professional development and support for our schools. So student performance, we want to close the performance gap and improve all outcomes for students. You will definitely see the report card embedded in this presentation, which I'm not sure was ever really exposed to my colleagues here, but our report card is an additional report card that comes on top of the student performance report card that is just for our students with IEPs. Our second big bucket is disproportionality. We are disproportionate in a few areas, and the biggest one is our suspensions of African American students, males to be specific, and also the identification of our alternative learning outcomes. Our next big bucket is to expand and support inclusive opportunities for students to receive educational services in the least restrictive environment. So if you look at these three buckets, we have nailed it down to student performance, turning around disproportionality, and ensuring that our students are being served in the least restrictive environment possible. So our equity commitments, this is just a different way of looking at what I just shared with you. We are addressing disproportionality. We are building capacity through professional learning. We are strengthening academic outcomes for all, and we are expanding equitable access. Next slide. Again, the alignment is here. Future Ready MCPS strategic plan, our Maryland Blueprint, And MSDE has just recently released Maryland Transforms, which is a handbook for special education leadership and guidance. So let's talk about a little overview here. Our special education overview, we definitely are following along with the same 3 buckets. And in order to achieve those, we are talking about achievement and readiness, looking at our early childhood outcomes, social, emotional, knowledge, and behavior, proficiency rates for students with IEPs definitely remain below the state target, so we definitely want to increase those areas. We also want to identify the achievement gaps and also increase those areas to a more positive end. We're looking really closely at pre-K and PEP readiness for expectations to ensure that we're doing everything possible to build a foundation for our students before they even get into K-12 education. In the middle, equity and inclusion, least restrictive environment targets missed or across all of the grade spans, and this is where you talk about a continuum of services, which we are definitely starting from grassroots with our continuum of services, ensuring that our special schools, our extension programs, and all of the boutique programs that we have are actually encompassing the right type of students, so that our staff can focus on the purpose of what those schools were created to do for our students. And as you see here, I mentioned earlier about the disproportionality and inclusion, and also bringing parent voice into the situation through surveys and making sure that we are actually utilizing the data from the surveys and actually including that in our planning efforts as well. And then the big bucket of accountability. The presenters before us said we would love to sit before a group of staff and have a mandatory training. We would love to do that as well. Identify a few mandatory training opportunities so that staff can be well informed, and they can also be able to provide the students with the things that they need to be successful. And on the back end, staff can also be successful because they will have the tools needed for their toolbox to be able to not only support the students, but the families and also themselves. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Lisa Jones, and she'll talk about our state performance plan annual performance report. And this is the report card that I alluded to earlier that is just for students with IEPs.
Thank you, Dr. Cage. As you mentioned, our state performance plan does also have indicators, and 18 of them, as it supports our special education students. And these are the ones that are listed. Next slide, please. And as a result of that, we do have areas of success, which will include graduation, which is indicator 1, our dropout rate, indicator 2, as well as our proficiency rates for 4th grade reading and math, 8th grade reading and math, and high school reading, which is under indicator 3B. Also included is the subvention rates, which is indicator 5C, and our educational environment, which is 6C. There is still a disproportionate representation ages 6 through 21 in special ed, which is indicator 9, and the disproportionate representation in disability categories by race, indicator 10. Early childhood transition, indicator 12, and secondary transition, indicator 13, are all areas of success for us currently. Next slide, please. In addition to that, we do have some areas in which we did have to submit an improvement plan to the Maryland State Department of Education, and those areas included participation in state assessments for high school reading and math, proficiency in state assessments for high school math number 2, proficiency in alternative assessments, and that's for our 4th grade or 8th grade high school reading and math. There's still a gap in proficiency for 4th grade and 8th grade reading and math, school age least restrictive environment, as well as preschool LRE, childhood outcomes in the 3 areas, and our parent survey, our response rate, our results, and the alternative assessments. Next slide, please. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Cage for indicator report card.
So this is the indicator report card, and we actually took pictures and put it in here. As Dr. Jones shared, when we don't meet a state target, we have to complete an improvement plan of how we're going to make that particular area better. Every school district does. And it has to be submitted to the state. And what happens is the state monitors the activities of the plan that we submit. They can pick any area at any time to monitor. And when I say monitor, they can do an audit. So that's what monitoring activities look like. The audit may just be as simple as requesting documentation of completion of whatever it was that we put in the plan. For instance, if it's professional development that we said we were going to target specific audiences, sometimes they will come back and they will request sign-in sheets. They will request dates and times that those particular professional developments took place. And they will also want to see the surveys of the participants in those particular professional developments. If we don't have the data to be able to produce, to send to MSDE, then there's a finding there because we said we were doing something that we actually didn't do. So over the next couple of slides, you will see those areas that we didn't necessarily meet the targets for. And within your particular presentations that you have, there are clear explanations of what each of these indicators represent, and also the activities that we're supposed to be performing within our school district to increase these. Some of these also come along with additional grant funds. So in order to continue receiving the grant funds, we have to increase the target positively, increase meeting the target positively, excuse me. So if there is no positive growth over time, what happens is we start to see funding being reduced in these areas to support. The obligation of meeting the target is not reduced, just the support and the funding from MSDE is reduced, but the school district has to pick up that cost, which we have a few of those grants this year that this is the last year we're receiving. So we're going to have to start picking up the cost in some of these areas. I'll pause right here because these are a lot of slides and entertain any questions.
Just very quickly, when I was looking at the student participation, the indicator report card, so we were doing actually well in 2021, 2022. I mean, no, actually we did not do well in 2022, but we did significant well in 2022, 2023. It's a significant jump, at least for the reading in high school. We were like a 97.4, and then we took a big dip, which is, to me, is more than 3%. So do we have an idea what was the indicator, what was happening there?
So if you look at the years, and these dates are always 2 years behind, as you can see by the data. That
Okay.
was right in the middle of that COVID,
Yes,
when we were all online and kids still took state performance tests.
That makes sense.
Yes, so that's in that area right
Yes.
there.
Okay, so
And I can tell you, I have shared all of this in our principal PLCs. They are like extremely excited to receive this information. Now they know what to target, right? Now they understand oh, so this is why staff is telling me we can't be out of timeline, or we need to do this, or we need to do that. This particular area that's in front of you, currently 3A, when I was just at the principal PLC last week and I said, guys, we're right on the cusp of actually meeting this target. It's simple. Have the kids take the test. They may not finish the test, but something as simple as having them come in the afternoon, having them test after everyone else finishes. I mean, you know, as a former principal, I had to get creative with getting our students in the room that need that one-to-one. You know, I've even created spaces, what we can call, where it's a non-traditional classroom testing site, where I partnered with the library, and I had a teacher and a para that came into the study rooms and actually gave a test because my particular student would get overstimulated. So this was a better environment. Just doing little small tweaks and we will definitely meet this state target. That's all it is, the number of students that actually took the test.
Okay, because that was the other question I have is it also, we don't know how many kids this data represents in a sense, right?
We do. It represents 100% of our students with IEPs and attested grades.
Which is how many?
That's a good question.
No, that's what
How
I
many
meant.
in
I just
attested grades?
because if somebody's looking at this, it could be like, but you guys have very few kids who this is right. It could be 10 kids, and this represents 10 kids. But what I'm trying to bring home is that our IEP population is very significant,
14.
and we have very significant numbers of kids in high school with IEP because that's who this represents. And if I'm sorry, I got a little bit ahead of myself. I went to the next indicator report card, right? And I'm looking at the fourth grade, and these are again our kids with IEPs, right? In the fourth grade. So these are all of fourth graders in Montgomery County,
Correct. And
right?
eighth. Fourth and eighth.
No, this is performance. The one that I But I jump ahead.
Moved to performance.
Yeah, I jumped to performance. But still, I'm about to cry because
Yes, the numbers are alarming.
yes, to say the least. But what you're saying is we also have to keep in mind that those numbers, you have to go back 2 years, which is the height of the pandemic, right? Yep. Which sometimes we don't do because I look at those numbers and I'm thinking 2022, 23, when we're already coming down a little bit out of the pandemic. But that data is 2 years old, right? So when people are watching at home or people are going to be able to access this, they need to think that this data is during the height of the pandemic. Am I right?
Yes, you're correct. And I can tell you just a raw number, 23, 24, we had 21,322 students. And just looking at our population, middle and high, totaling about 10,000 students with IEPs. And if I were to break down the elementary and just do an average, it's about 18,000 students that actually tested.
That's significant. That's even sadder. Okay, I just wanted to put it in context because when you look at the numbers, it could be like, oh, it's a couple hundred kids. We can work with that. We're talking thousands of kids. Okay.
Two-digit thousands.
I'm sorry, Dr. K. I don't know. Do you have a quick question? Sorry.
No, I just wanted to make sure that I understand something correctly. So the state law or policy, whatever it is that I can figure out later, is that if for a certain amount of time you're not meeting specific targets, then instead of providing more support to the school system to help reach those targets,
Take it away.
they're taking money away, and yet we're still expected to reach the same targets.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You won bingo. Absolutely.
ding.
Yeah, that's exactly how we're working here on education. We're doing great. Okay. And then, quick question.
So I see some low-hanging fruit. You mentioned one of them. Some of this will probably take us years to get where we need to be. I mean, we need to do better, but to flip like that is going to be very difficult. So the ones I see as low-hanging fruit is parent survey. I mean, would we actually lose money if we don't get enough parents to fill out the survey? Is that one of the
We do
items?
have a grant, yes, ma'am, that
Okay.
pays for a parent liaison. We have a part-time parent liaison. That was one of the sticking points I made with principals. So we have a whole campaign that we're going to do when this parent survey comes out in the spring. It's going to be plastered everywhere, and if I can get some money, it'll even be plastered on the buses in the metro, because there is great advertisement there, right? But we want to increase these numbers, and we definitely look at all of the surveys. And the reason why this is so astonishing is because a lot of my colleagues have never seen this, so now they know. You know, a part of it is having the information that you need to do better. And we already see work happening in our schools and in our central services because they know this is what our laser focus is.
Excellent, because I fully expect us to meet all of this for the parent survey. And then also the test taking, you already mentioned that. Some of the other issues, the least restrictive environment, I mean, some of that is we're pretty far. I don't know how we can get better, but some of this we might have to revisit at another time. But thank you so much for providing this to us and to staff. This is the first time I've ever seen this report card, and maybe I missed something in the past, but
No, you did not miss anything.
thank you. Thank you for highlighting
This is a first for all. And I think you mentioned it was a first for principals, which is,
Yeah.
I'm glad they have that information now, but it's also very traveling to me personally that they did not have this ever or in the past few years.
I didn't even know it existed.
We
This is
didn't
the
know-
first time I'm hearing
So-
about it, and so it's really important.
So I just want to say this was a lot of heavy lifting, I'm sure, for your staff to put this together. But I think this is also goes along with the alignment of how, I hate that word transparent, it's so overused, transparency. But I'm going to have to use it in this case because I think it's important for the public and for people and for us who make decisions on budgets and policies to also very much understand the process of how things work or are not working well. And so I really just want to say thank you. So with that, I'm sorry, keep interrupting you. Please keep going.
That's okay, thank you. You know, I'm very transparent even to a fault sometimes because I know sometimes it's information overload. But I always want, number one, staff, community, everyone to feel supported. And I want them to understand why I'm moving the way I'm moving. This is real data, right? And these are the things that we truly need to focus on. I don't like to turn in reports and not be able to provide the data to those that I'm turning the reports in to show, even though we may not meet all the targets perfectly the first try, we are showing that we are trying and we are doing this. So there's a lot of great work that has happened in central services already. And now all we're doing is bringing it all together, like Thomas says so often, and making all the arrows point in the same direction. Because we have a lot of people doing a lot of great things. There's a lot of work that's being repeated, and all we have to do is talk to each other. Mm-hmm. Which I loved with the twice exceptional presentation, because we are even working more closely as a team with our curriculum and instruction and our school leadership area. Like we all actually are talking to each other and making decisions together. And that is definitely extremely helpful and needed.
And Dr. Kay, I also think it's important for us to not forget that when we're looking at especially our fifth graders, right? They did not have the socialization and the skills development that we need, that we base on and we build on to move on to, you know what I mean? And that has continued through. So there's a lot of other factors that were kind of out of our control that have contributed to not just children with special education needs, but to all children, that we still see, the cause and effect today. Even the kids who were supposed to go into sixth grade, that transition period that is so important to build on. And I would say, like, my kid was 2020, he didn't have any of the rite of passage that a high schooler, you and something to begin something, right? They didn't have that. And that was a struggle. And I still see it, right? There's that melancholic feeling that you did not end the way you're supposed to end, although you're not begin the way you're supposed to begin. And I think those are contributing factors that, as much as I think, let's just think about scores, let's just think about math, they are social, emotional contributors that hamper the productivity, if you might say, whatever, the progress that we cannot just ignore. So just want to say that for content. So go ahead.
Thank you. You guys have said a lot of things that really tugs on my heart. I, too, have 3 twice exceptional children, whether it be my baby who is legally blind, my middle child who suffers with anxiety and depression and has to study really hard, and then my oldest child that was gifted but also special education in the area of English language arts. So this work is personal, and I'm very passionate about it. And I always believe that you're in the right place at the right time to definitely make a difference. So thank you for everything. Dr. Jones, you want to take the next few slides?
Absolutely. So with what we have going on, we do have state complaints, due processes, and administrative reviews. Our state complaints, if you'll notice, they have increased. We had 20 in the year 2023, 33 in the year 24. Last year, we had 125 state complaints. And this year to date, we already have 35. So unfortunately, we may surpass what we had last year for state complaints.
I'll just add to what Dr. Jones is saying, because I know the burning question is why. I've also, like I said, shared this information with our school leaders. And yes, we have some very serious advocates that are filing state complaints now. But what I try to get them to focus on is not focus on the filings, but focus on the fact that there are findings after the filings. So anybody can file any type of complaint on you at any time, whether frivolous or not. But when the investigation is done and there are actual findings that come out of the investigation, that's the areas we should be focusing on. And we, with these state complaints, 96% of them are yielding findings, which is another reason why we chose the areas that we chose in those 3 big buckets that I talked about earlier. So everything that we're showing you today, there's direct alignment as to why the work will move forward in the fashion that it is. Questions?
Just very quickly, because we said, okay, so these are the complaints. But I guess my question is, out of those 125 complaints, how many had foundation out of the 125? I can tell you one of them I probably know because of the constituents that I have, and because I have a school in my district that serves kids with very special high needs, is speech therapy. I think all of us have had complaints and on the board about speech therapy. And there's one, and I just want to make the difference, right? There's speech therapy and there's speech therapy for certain. So the speech therapy I'm talking about is for kids who, because when I was in ESOL, apparently I had speech therapy, and it was great. I loved it because she would take me out and give me candy afterwards. It was just awesome. But, she would put the pencil in my mouth and try not, the S's and the pronunciation. And but these are with kids who have very high needs, who either has some trauma injuries, are learning to talk from zero. So the biggest complaint was a lot of the speech therapy was done online, which I still cannot comprehend for populations who, I'm not an expert, I'm not a speech therapist or a doctor, but I'm a mom, and I have worked with special populations in the past, and I can tell you, I was like, that doesn't make sense for us to be doing online speech therapy. But then when I dig more into it, it was the fact that we're not the only ones who are experiencing the huge shortage of speech therapists. So in a way, we were all competing with each other, all the districts, right? And we had a speech therapist on staff that I don't think we recognized the value of them, and they just left the system, and we lost a lot of really good speech therapists. So we were in a situation, I think, that it was dire. Not to say, though, a lot of kids did not get their speech therapist or their therapy. So I don't know if you want to. It's just an example that I went. But I'm just trying to see, out of the 125 complaints, what were your major ones that you were like, absolutely, those are areas that we need to improve.
And if I can just add a related, because it's related to the speech therapy, and I'm wondering, obviously if we're not providing something that's valid complaint and all of those things, but I know from a variety of experiences that we have a huge lack of speech therapists. This is a nationwide problem. This is not an MCPS issue. It's an issue, right? And perhaps others as well. I'm not sure how occupational therapy and things like that. Even if you have private insurance, the wait lists are very long, and you're just supposed to wait it out somehow. And so I'm just wondering, not with understanding, I understand the legal process and maybe they don't care, but where we have just a lack of resources, it's not because we don't want to provide these services for our students. Is there a way to, and maybe that goes back to the category type, but where we can kind of parse that out to see the difference between, yes, we want to provide that, we just literally don't have enough speech therapists, versus, yeah, someone kind of messed that process up over there.
Thank you for that question. So just a few things, and I know at some point we have to get past COVID, but COVID taught us some things that we should keep, and it also taught us some things that we should let go, right? But I can tell you nationally, our speech therapists, it's not as broad as we used to have a speech therapist in school districts for every single child. However, we are creating a space where we can promote in our local universities programs where we have grant funds, where we're trying to partner with a Grow Your Own to have more people go into speech and actually have some of our current staff go in and add the endorsement for speech. So I just actually signed that paperwork about a week ago to have that program come in. Speech therapy online, just like all of the medical practices and things that you can now do online, in some cases it does work. I can't say that it doesn't, but it's one of those things that we have to get used to, having in our schools to say that it works. When a parent out and out refuses speech therapy, we try to find a person. We really, really do. We are working really, really hard to try to find a person. And sometimes I wish I possessed some of those extra skills so that I could actually provide services, because I would. It is no consolation that it is a nationwide problem, but in the space that we have done a great job. Staff directors over that particular area has done a great job with accommodating our students that really, really need that person in person. But speech is not one of those areas, to get back to our state findings and corrective actions, that I've seen a lot of. So I'll answer the second part of that, which is what are the areas? We go back to the big buckets, currently present levels of academic functioning. So basically, a lot of the findings are coming from the IEP itself and the way the IEP is constructed. So what we have started in our area, which kicked off actually September 16th, is we've partnered with MSDE to bring forth professional development for all staff, central services on down, to our paras, to our librarians, to whomever touches our students on present levels of academic functionings. Those trainings has been happening 3 to 4 times a week. One in the morning and one in the afternoon. So right now it is optional. Like I said, we would love some mandatory trainings. However, it is an area that we are finding a lot of our state complaints in. The other area is least restrictive environment. We have to do some training on goal writing, which is our second spinoff of our partnership with MSDE. That training happens after the present levels of academic functionings. Another area that we are opening up in our curriculum area is we're going back to office hours. When I was in New Mexico and enacted office hours, we started off with 38 participants, and by the time I left, we were over 300, because this was the space where you could come and get the training and get the information and have your questions answered. So we are kicking off with our office hours, and uniquely enough, our office hours may be more than an hour depending on the training, but they will know ahead of time where to go and get that information and get that training. With the office hours, we were just talking last week and are creating a space for our paraprofessionals, because we know it's very, very difficult for them to be able to get out of class or leave the students. These will be conducted after hours because, of course, we're still at work, and we're trying to move some funding around so that we can pay them a stipend for actually getting on to those trainings. Just trying to be creative here. Another area of our state complaint is simple things like ensuring that we have the correct procedural safeguards, that we are actually using the prior written notice properly. So it's really things surrounding around the IEP. And one of the suggestions that I did give principals in their PLCs is when you get your state findings report, because there's one that comes after every investigation. It's normally on one IEP, one child. Take those findings, pull a set of IEPs randomly, and look for the same thing. If it's there, then it's something that we need to fix as a school. Because what we're seeing, which is this slide that's up, our state findings are now systemic. And I've been working with MSDE, really partnering with them so that they don't give us a systemic state finding, which will come with a whole lot of work and a whole lot of people in and out of our schools that we can't control. So here in front of you is our state findings, which I think one of our neighboring counties is now going through. Here are our state findings. We just pulled the big ones. Timelines, provisions of 5-day docs not being provided before and after the meeting. So there are timelines with everything. We didn't make sure that the IEP was reviewed annually, so we missed that date. We didn't follow proper procedures for the reevaluation. We have not ensured student progress. An IEP is not just a paper that we take out once a year to review. There are goals and objectives that are on the IEP. And just like a report card, we're supposed to actually be checking those, tracking those, updating those, writing on the actual IEP because it is a live document. And we really didn't have a lot of documentation or evidence that we were doing that, and sometimes not even providing progress reports on the goals and objectives of the IEPs. These are all very simple things that we can fix just with some procedural safeguards of our own, having protocols, having checks and balances. But our schools needed to know what these things were. And I mean, if I get a findings report, then I'm thinking it's just me, it's just my school. But when I give it to all of the principals in a space, they all now understand they're not alone. Like, we all need this training. We have a lot of new principals. We have a lot of new teachers out there, and we need to be able to provide them the training that they need.
Can I go on?
So this is just, though, people who have filed a complaint with the state, right? Now, as a current parent, there's a lot of stuff we have to deal with on a daily basis, some school stuff, some non-school stuff. And I know of families where they are experiencing some of these things, but they don't file a complaint, or they don't speak up, or they don't say anything,
Correct.
or they don't feel like they can or should or want to cause problems and all of these things. And so I'm just really happy to hear that we are trying to encourage our staff to just look at these and basically look for the patterns, right? We don't need to have the state tell us we need to do this before we look to see whether or not we need to fix some of these things, because some of them are simple, right? Like the 5-day, notices and those kinds of things. Understanding that our school staff also have a lot of things happening on any given day. But I think making perhaps some sort of, I don't know if we have like a checklist or things like that can maybe auto-populate at certain times where you have to, sometimes there's forms where you have to fill out this question or you can't keep going. Things like that kind of really force folks to get into the structure of things, because I think it could be really easy to overlook some of what, are basic things. And again, and especially sometimes culturally, some of our families don't feel comfortable or think it's okay to kind of quote unquote challenge authority. And so I worry about those families that are not going to be as vocal as I am and say, well, I don't accept that answer. Who else can I talk to now?
Okay, moving on.
Oh.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Can we get through the chart?
Yeah. Oh, actually, my question's on the last slide, so we're good. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, on the last slide. Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right, so you can go to the next one. The request for due process and administrative reviews is separate from the state complaints. I just wanted to share that data with you as well as to how we have moved more from mediation into our due process realm. And I have a definite expert in that area now. She has taken and hit the ground running and is really working in the area to make due process, mediation, state complaints, findings, central IEPs. I mean, she is just fabulous, and that's Dr. Vanetta Christian. So I'm sure she'll be coming back to do a presentation on all of the great things that's happening there really soon. So here are the top 10 parent issues. We kind of tried to spell it all out for you. I shared a few of them with you already. Least restrictive environment. FAPE is the number one because it's very, very easy to file a state complaint to say FAPE was not being provided. Free appropriate public education.
Thank you.
That is what FAPE stands for, and that means that we are providing an opportunity where our students can be a part of an inclusive community where they are being challenged at the same rate of their peers. They're actually being educated through the provisions of the IEP. Goals and objectives are being tracked. Parents are being informed of the data and progress of the student. So that is what FAPE is. So next slide.
Okay. Ms. Stewart, you want to ask your question?
Sure. On the issue category, we have placement less restrictive, placement more restrictive, and they're about even in number, but in the report card, it says that we are more restrictive. We're not meeting our less restrictive goals, right? So can you kind of contextualize this? Because again, this is about even one way or the other.
Sure, I'll start it off and I'll ask Dr. Christian to come in if I don't get something right. So from what I've been able to see or unpack, shall I say, since I've been here, the parent complaints are truly driven by parents, attorneys, and advocates. If we decide as an IEP team on a specific placement for a student, sometimes the parent or the advocate may disagree. They feel it's either too stringent, meaning more restrictive. They want their student to be in an environment more relative to their peers. Or sometimes they feel as though we are not being restrictive enough because they prefer for their student to have a one-to-one environment, a smaller space. What is happening is we're deciding as a district or a county or a school system, leaning more to the more restrictive, which the state is saying we're not making the best decisions in that area. So that's where the two align or where the two meet here. Did I get it right?
Yeah, I think that about sums it up. I'm sorry, I said I think that about sums it up. The only thing I would add is when you speak to the discrepancy between how the state complaints show data that's pretty even, there are some parents who want more service, some parents who believe they should have more inclusive opportunities. But in the improvement plans, we have to speak more specifically to the state mandate of allowing students to access the least restrictive environment that they're entitled to. And so some of what we need to improve is making sure that we're taking into consideration how to maximize resources in the least restrictive environment to give students those opportunities and also help parents understand the resources that can help the students be successful and access the curriculum in those environments so that there are not assumptions being made about having to go to more restrictive learning centers, extensions programs, or even in some cases, non-public placements. There are things that MCPS schools are doing well and can serve students, and some of it is just a matter of making sure we're working with families to make sure they understand the opportunities that are available to them right at their resident schools.
So I think if we made the least restrictive environment a place where the family felt like their kid was actually making progress. So there would be a couple of reasons why that kid maybe not making progress, and it could be even the way that classroom's structured, or and then that parent just gets frustrated and asks for more restrictive because they just can't see their kid not making progress month after month, year after year. Some of that,
Exactly.
and probably there's other reasons too, but thanks, that really helped me wrap my head around this kid's not getting what they need, or at least parents not seeing that. So thank you.
You're correct, Ms. Stewart, exactly what you said. So, in a great segue, Dr. Christian has taken us into talking about private placements. When I unpacked and uncovered this information, I literally, my eyebrows went to the top of my hairline. And every time I look at it, it still does. This is one of those areas where the state is pulling back funds. So as you can see, over time, we have steadily increased the different types of payments that we are paying for our students in the various schools across a few states, because it's not just Maryland, where we actually have to send students. And I truly believe that sometimes these placements are warranted. But sometimes this goes directly into that question that you just asked, Ms. Stewart, about why is the imbalance of our state talking about least restrictive environments and then our parent complaints. This kind of folds over into the fact that we are putting more students in a more restrictive environment. Based off of the percentages and the populations, we're supposed to be able to serve them here. So this is a particular grant that is currently the state pays 70% of what you see here. MCPS pays 30%. I will ask Ms. Julie Hall to talk about this, but I believe we are going to 50% next year, so we'll have to pay 50%, and then she can explain what happens after.
So with every private placement, we submit the enrollment to the state and we get a percentage back from that. It's called the 300% share. And in the next sequential years, that percentage that the state is going to reimburse us back is going to decrease by 10% each year. So then MCPS would come up with the difference for that. And this is the tuition for residential, school-age day, for our Maryland School for the Blind and Deaf. Jointly funded is what it means, jointly funded. We pay the educational portion of the day during the day, but the student is a resident student, and the state pays for the residency side of that jointly funded. And then there's home and hospital. And you'll see that we are progressively getting more and more, part of our budget is going up each year in the millions.
Can we just give me a very quick example so we can actually digest this better? So you have a student with very high special needs that needs to live in a in-home situation, a residency. The state pays for the residency. We pay for the education costs. But are you saying then?
That's for specifically that one row called jointly funded.
The jointly funded,
Yes,
okay.
so for example, for a school-age day, a student would still be living at home and they go to one of the special schools that the student has been placed at, like Kennedy Krieger or Ivy Mount, and when they would get their day school services, and we pay for the tuition and related services that go along with that student.
And then the state will pick up the medical costs of the residency cost.
Not for school-age day. So that would be the first line where residence.
Okay.
Residence is literally the student is in resident at a facility.
Okay.
All, 24.
Outside the house.
Yes.
Okay. But the other scenario that you were talking about, because I'm a little bit confused, so I just want to make sure that people are not confused. You said that then every year the state's going to decrease funding,
The percent that
the
they
percentage
reimburse.
that they usually reimburse. Is that also in this situation, or for the ones that are not in?
It's for every private placement.
For any private placement, there's going to be a decrease of support from the state.
Yes.
That is going to have to then picked up by the locals, in that case
Correct.
us,
Correct.
to be able to put that funding towards.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. A quick question.
Yes, thank you. And so when we're looking at these private placements, so let's just say, for example, the school age day, because it may be that, no, we're not in a position at this time with resources or whatnot to help students who are legally blind. And so there's, and also just with socialization, right? It might be better for them to be with other students who also are legally blind, or whatever factors go into that. But if we're just looking at, for example, school age day, which, if I'm reading correctly, is the bulk, it seems, of what we spend here, about $53 million with an M. Are those reviewed to see whether or not the student still needs that placement because MCPS cannot provide the services? Because I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that, I see the good work that all of you are doing. I've talked with many of you. I see where we're heading and where we're trying to head. And is it that a student maybe in first grade gets this, school age day private placement, and then we just don't ever look at it again, and now they're graduating from 12th grade and we just keep paying? Because as we grow as a system and as we get better trained and provide better resources and things like that, I mean, my hope is that we become better able to have our students stay in Montgomery County Public Schools rather than private placements without the assumption that, well, they just need to keep going. Because I also, if our staff are not getting the information or the training, well, then of course they don't feel equipped to be able to provide for that student in the general education setting or perhaps even in some of our programs. So do we review these? And if not, is there a plan to perhaps put a plan together to start doing so that we don't automatically assume that year after year, yes, these students just need to keep continuing in private placement?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Montoya. Yes, yes, and yes. No, we were not reviewing any of the private placements that I could find, that I can unpack to say this child is ready to go back into the general education setting with MCPS, or whether or not some of our boutique programs, our extension programs, our special schools, our learning centers would be equipped to now manage the students' education. We are currently creating standard operating procedures for all of these things. As I said earlier, really starting grassroots with looking at the procedures in each area. And even though this was supposed to be happening, where there was some type of cyclical observational feedback cycle happening to ensure that our students were getting our very best, it was not, but it is happening now. We just have so much catch up.
Right. Okay, thank you so much. Because I think, especially, of course, we want all of our students to get whatever services they need, wherever that may be, right? If some students do need a private placement or some other placement, then we absolutely want to support that. We want all of our kids to thrive. And we want to acknowledge that sometimes MCPS may not be able to provide that for them.
Correct.
But if our kids can, especially when we're looking at these really tight fiscal constraints, where more and more and more keeps getting shoved to the local, I just want to make sure that with our growing system and the growing body of knowledge and resources that we're continuing to have, that if we can provide for our students and families in our spaces, that we are able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And we can. We definitely can. Yep, next slide. And I just wanted to share with you a 3-year trend of also what our settlements are looking like. This is separate and apart from our private placements. This is also, this is not covered by MSDE, so this is completely local. Next slide. Strategies for improvement. So as you see the pattern here, we wanted to continually address our 3 big bucket areas. So even though it looks the same, it is a little different here. We set goals as a team, all of us sitting at this table for our respective areas. We all have goals within our areas that we lead and supervise. And we also have goals as a team sitting before you. So one of our goals is to increase the proficiency rates of students with disabilities in reading and math over the next 3 years. Our other goal is to reduce those suspensions, especially with those students that are disproportionate. And our third goal is to increase the percentage of students served in the general education setting, meaning we're trying to increase our least restrictive environments, have more students in inclusion, have more students with more opportunities, and decrease the more restrictive environments. So what we've done over the next couple of slides is break it down of what that would look like for the various levels of those that we support. So here are our improvement strategies for administrators. Definitely have already hit the ground running with these items that are here by collaborating with our schools. We are setting up quarterly, daily review cycles with our schools that are germane and aligned to our report card and actually those state findings where we're looking at our schools who may be needing more support in those areas and dispatching teams outside of cross-functional teams to be able to support them in reviewing and looking at those IEPs, because if we have one, 9 times out of 10, we may have more. So we want to be sure that we're giving them the skills that they need to be able to know how to do that review process. Facilitating professional learning communities. I love being before principals. I think I shared with them last week that being an elementary school principal was possibly my most favorite job. But I am middle school all the way. But even though those babies, they really did touch my heart, principals have a very difficult job to man everything that they have to man. And my team here knows that it is one of my focus areas to ensure that schools have what they need to be successful. Because when they are successful, our students and our teachers are successful as well. Equity and inclusion, cultural competence is extremely important. It's a lot of the work that I was able to do in New Mexico and transferring here. We are very diverse. So there needs to be a basic understanding of how cultural competence comes into the play with actual learning and learning styles. So just looking at all the data as a whole, making sure that we're pinpointing our students for different types of services and also entertaining the whole child. I can tell you that our professional development this year and possibly the next 2 years will be extreme because of the level of professional development that we have to ensure that our schools have. And then also the accountability piece, working with schools to make sure, like Dr. Christian said, the resources that we've already provided, are they being maximized? Are they being used to the best potential that we have? Looking and working with school principals to understand how to utilize a para or a teacher by maximizing the time on their schedules. And then also engaging with staff on quarterly reviews of least restrictive environment and placement data that goes even into our public and our private schools that we are placing, because it's extremely important. Next slide. Okay, improvement strategies for teachers, which looks very similar to the first slide, but we wanted to definitely hone in, and I'm told we have 3 minutes. We definitely wanted to hone in on what it looks like for teachers, so I wanted you to have this before you. Next slide. Then we're breaking it all the way down to our paraeducators, because really, honestly and truthfully, I'm gonna tell you, your paraeducator is extremely important. They are the wheels or the rubber that meets the road in those classrooms. So we definitely need to make sure that we're supporting them differently. And here is our section for our improvement for students and parents. We had our first CCAC meeting, Special Education Advisory Parent Council. I messed that up, but that's what it is in a nutshell. And it went over really, really well. And we have some exciting plans to do with that particular group this year as well. So we always like to make sure that we have resources here. If you're interested in joining our CCAC, the landing page is here. Who do you call for whatever source? All of these are links. We have our Family Support Center here. We definitely will be having a special education resource fair, our PEP virtual workshops, our office hours, and many different things that are coming. I'm really excited to also announce that starting in January of 2026, we will be launching our parent newsletter, where we will be having a plethora of information and resources, think pads. We will have little trainings there, suggestions and strategies also. So we have a special Dropbox email that you see here, specsupportservices@mcpsmd.org. And any parent that is interested in receiving this newsletter, please sign up and we will be sending the first one out come January 2026. This is also something that I did in New Mexico, and we actually, and I'm gonna say this wrong as well, we broke the platform or the dashboard because so many parents joined, we had to purchase and go to a bigger dashboard. So we are definitely hiring and also staffing in special education. We can never have too many to serve the needs of our students and staff. Next slide. So we definitely have a recruitment campaign that is going through our talent management area. We also send staff to support those efforts out there. Next slide. This is a video that you can look at in your leisure. Next slide. And just sharing some updates as to where we are with our vacancies and our fill rates. And we've actually narrowed it down to schools and the particular positions that we are looking for. Keep going. That's all our staffing slides. And this concludes our presentation for today. We stand for any further questions.
Dr. Cage, thank you so much to you and your staff for this very thorough presentation. Like I said before, some of this information was never shared with us in the sense, and it's so important to be able to also do priorities and so on as we go into the budget. So all these things are really, really important. So I really want to say, to you and your staff, thank you for being here. I know you guys have your plates full. We're hiring. I know you're still hiring folks, and I think Montgomery County is a wonderful county to work in and to live in and raise your kids. You did talk a little bit about cultural competence. I would say we also kind of, I do not want to miss this opportunity to say that is very important. It's very important, especially I think with populations that are majority minority in our county, in our school system. It is like, Heritage Month, so I'll take the opportunity to say we need to diversify the leadership and the folks who work in special education in Montgomery County in our schools. That needs to be part of the mission and vision that I know I have shared with you personally, because it is the largest growth of population in our system, and because it is parents are not as loud as they should be, in my opinion, and the kids are the ones who lose that advocacy and fall through the cracks in the gray zone areas, and then we're trying to play catch up in middle school and high school when honestly it's a little bit too late. And I have personally seen many children graduate from our school systems without the skills, who were born and raised in Montgomery County, who have a hard time reading and writing, who were never, ever identified. And that should not be able to happen in a wonderful county that we have with so many resources and services. But I also believe that representation is very important. I think one more quick question.
Yes, just one quick, it's not so much as a question as a please, if we can please do this. Prior to you coming and to even some of you in the positions that you're in or even coming to MCPS, we had some meetings where a staff member represented that staff, when they're trained, they're not trained about specific, disability diagnoses. So for example, we're not doing a training on this is what ADHD is, and these are some of the challenges, and it might vary from child to child. It doesn't look the same in every child. And the if I remember correctly, and maybe my colleagues, if I misstate, was that, well, we don't want to put labels on kids and put them in boxes and things like that. Absolutely, we don't ever want to do that to any child or adult. But if our staff don't understand how our kids are showing up, and we talk about cultural competence and we talk about not basically criminalizing behaviors, I just have no idea how they are supposed to be able to do those things if they don't understand some of these, what we call disabilities. I don't like to refer to them in that way, but if they don't understand them to begin with. So I really, for all of our staff, whether it's in-school staff, out-of-school staff, board members, right, we all have these issues come across us, you know, frequently. And so we have to understand the diagnoses that our kids are even coming into our school system with to begin with, not just how to provide an alternate testing space, right? Because then we're going to misinterpret or misperceive or mislabel, quite frankly, some of our children, and that really does them a disservice. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And I think when we had a meeting with our folks from the ACIU, one of the things they asked about was the training for security with their special education and how to react. You know, they're like, we need to have that training. We need to know what to do in situations so they don't make the situation worse, but they have the tools to be able to escalate the situation, to be able to, you know, to come to a peaceful conclusion in a sense, right? But if they don't have those tools, it's really hard to do that. Last word.
Also, don't forget substitute teachers. I have had so many people come in and like so excited, they're retired, they're coming in as substitute, and they're like, we didn't get any training. We don't know how to manage a classroom. And so we should probably add that to another bucket. And also this family partnership, this page is so important. I've had parents come up to me almost in tears about getting all this paperwork right before IEP and not having time to really review it and being totally overwhelmed during a meeting and just leave in tears because they really had no time to really prepare or even understand what was happening. So this page is really important about improvement for students and parents. So thank you so much. Great work and a lot of work to do, but I have a lot of confidence right here at these people at this table. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cage. And I just want to say, special education touches literally all aspects of our system. So we cannot be working in silos. We have to be being able to work with everybody. And again, I feel like everybody needs to have those skills across the board. So I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to the audience, thank you to our staff, thank you to our board members. Our next meeting is November 18th. And we're going to be talking about identifying and serving students with communication special circumstances, including our students who are homeless, medical fragile students, and those students with communication needs. So we look forward to seeing it. I'm sure we'll see some folks from your staff at that meeting. Yes. With that being said, thank you to all at home for watching, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.